Ladies and gentlemen, my name is TotalBiscuit. I'm here to ask and answer one simple question. WTF is Grid 2. Hashtag Grid 2 is the sequel to Race Driver Grid, which is one of the many racing games from Codemasters who are pretty good at this kind of thing. This is, of course, the sequel. And that's really about it. I mean, there's nothing else to say. It's Grid 2. I mean, what else could it be? So, let's get into it, shall we? Just pretty much straight away. I'd love to elaborate on that, but there really isn't a lot to elaborate on. So, Grid 2 consists of two things, World Series Racing and Grid Online. These are completely separate modes that don't affect each other in any way, shape, or form. World Series Racing is the single-player story mode, and I don't use that word lightly. It is a story-driven campaign regarding a fictional racing tournament called the World Series of Racing. You are brought on as a viral star, essentially, for these guys, and you are the personality who is driving the sport forward and driving that league forward and so on and so forth. Grid Online, on the other hand, is exactly what you would think. It is the online multiplayer. Now, the Grid Online system is actually based on older games in the Codemasters series, which often involve buying new cars and buying upgrades and things like that. That's actually entirely confined to the multiplayer now. In the single player, there's none of that. You win your cars and are just given them, for the most part. As you move up through various tiers of racing, you are given new cars, and there's occasionally challenges, but most of the time those challenges are actually pointless, simply because they allow you to win the other car in a two-car choice that the game just gives you arbitrarily. So, there's also no upgrading involved either. The only customization in the single player is actually in terms of the cosmetics of the car itself. Which is a strange thing indeed, but we'll be checking out both in this video today, so let's get into World Series Racing, shall we? As always, when it comes down to Codemasters games, very, very stylized in almost every possible respect with the interface and things like that. This is Season 2 of the WSR, which means that I'm in a new garage. This one's got a projector, so the menu's on the wall now instead of being on a little computer screen, which is kind of neat. Gives you updated information. It lets you see what's going on there. You can check out your garage and have a look at the cars that are available in it through My Vehicles. Your number of fans. This is I suppose this is important, but I really haven't found what it actually affects. The game says you need more fans. This is important, but it never really seems to tell you what they give you, other than achievement points, I suppose. Take a quick look at the options menu. Not really much to say here, honestly. We'll go to graphics options. We will note that you do have a graphics benchmark. Very nice. Always good to see. You'll also notice that this thing is clearly designed with laptops in mind as well. The game actually advertises Intel HD graphics, which is strange considering a high-end racing game like this. You would think you want to play it on something higher end than a integrated graphics card. I don't really know what's going on with that, but it's always nice to have a couple of laptop-specific functions in, like the battery status display, power save mode. That's cool. Quality advanced, there you go. Let's crank it up a little bit, shall we? Turns out I've only been playing it on high. Let's go even higher. Absolutely. This game runs really... Oh, you can go up even higher than this. Fantastic. I've never tried this before. Let's see how this performs. Now, the game on high on my system with one Titan enabled runs ridiculously well. So, really no problems there whatsoever. Turns out I missed a bunch of stuff. Apparently, you can't have advanced blending and smoke shadows if you don't have an Intel integrated graphics card. That's a little bit disturbing. But yeah, on a single Titan, the game runs ridiculously fast. There's really no concern there. And also, I had a little look around the game forums regarding this game before I did my recording, and it turns out pretty much every graphics card is running quite nicely. Good reports from low-end, medium-end, and high-end graphics card users across the board, so seems to be fairly well optimized, which is always nice to see. Controls, as you might imagine, for this one, I am very much using a 360 pad. You can rebind the controls, as you can see there. Race wheel support, I'll be frank, I don't know. I don't own a race wheel. If you're into racing games to that kind of degree, that's something you're going to have to check out for yourself. I'm afraid I can't provide you that information. It's nice to see that there is some information here about the HUD and the ability to customize things, and the audio options are actually surprisingly good with a dynamic range and EQ option, which is always good for getting that really nice fidelity just how you like it. Overall, pretty decent as far as I can tell. And of course the game has multiple camera angles, so FOV is not an issue. Never has really been in racing games as far as I'm concerned. Okay, so let's get into it, shall we? Let's show you exactly what's going on there. Before I go on, though, DLC store. So there is DLC, day 1 DLC available for this, 4 pieces of it specifically. One of which was a pre-order bonus. The other 3, I believe, were retailer-specific exclusives. They're very expensive as well. Some of them upwards of $7 for like a car and 2 different routes on existing tracks. Yeah, that's not good at all. The day 1 DLC for this is absolute BS. The most useful piece of DLC is the pre-order DLC because it gives you a 15% discount permanently on the online store, which is online in-game credits. It's not microtransactions, but it gives you that discount in the multiplayer, so it's like a bit of a permanent head start there. Admittedly, since the racing is tier-based, it doesn't make that much difference. I went into an online race, and I went in there with the car that came with the review code, which I assume is the same as the pre-order car, which was the tier 4 event, and it turns out I am terrible and can't handle a car like that because it's way, way too complicated. So it didn't really help me in any way, shape, or form. So I don't think there's any pay to win there, but it's annoying to see cars, even if this game supposedly sports a roster of around 70 of the bloody things, sectioned off and sold off to different retailers. That absolutely sucks. Okay. So let's get into it, shall we? Pick an event. So you've got career, custom events, you've also got split screen mode and timeline. Timeline should tell you exactly what's been going on there. The career mode is where things start to really kick off, and it's divided into various things here. So to start with, it wants me to go to one of these European clubs and compete in some time attack events, and that will unlock the other stuff. There's also a test drive mode available pretty much any time. Vehicle challenges allow you to win new vehicles, and this is usually a promo event with some weird rule set, which is designed to earn you a bunch of fans. And then that is the WSR, that's the really big meaty thing. So you're going around the world trying to promote this event, trying to make it more successful, and you make it more successful by winning and actually bringing in fans to the sport. Interesting idea behind it. Nice little story mode, actually, with some pretty good narration. Also a cool use of stuff like ESPN. There's actually some pre-recorded stuff in the ESPN Sports Center, which adds nice amounts of authenticity to it, as well as a link, actual YouTube branding is in it as well, which is really kind of awesome. And it shows like fake YouTube videos where it puts your name in it and stuff like that. They actually put a significant amount of effort into really immersing you into this fantasy that you're a viral racing superstar, which is pretty cool. Alright, so we've got a time attack here, and then the rest of the events will unlock as we go. So let's rock and all roll, shall we? The narrator always explains exactly what's going on there, and will also chime in during races, although I've got to say his narration during races is for the most part useless and often very inaccurate. Just like the previous Codemaster games, you can pick a name that he'll call you by, so he calls me John, which is very weird, actually. I don't even like people calling me John on the internet in the first place. It really freaks me out if a video game does it. But his on-track stuff is pretty useless, honestly. The only really good thing he tells you, more often than not, is where the damage you've taken and what kind of effect that has. That's alright, but aside from that, a lot of it's even wrong. It's like, yeah, you better maintain first place after you've won the race. Yes, I have actually had that happen. Which is pretty stupid. It's like, you've got to finish in the top 3 when it's a one-on-one event. Like, really? Yeah, tell me more. Okay, let's rock and roll. We've cranked this one all the way up to maximum, so this will be the first time that I've actually seen how this game performs with everything in the mix there. It was doing about 250 plus frames per second, which is way more than you could ever possibly need. Here, it's dipping down to about 90, which, again, for absolutely most people is totally fine in every possible respect. Me as 120 Hz monitor user, it would be nice if it was a little bit higher, but if I want to do that and just turn on my second Titan. Now it just sounds like I'm just bragging. Alright. It's quite the pretty game, as you can see. I mean, let's be honest, Codemaster games generally are. The car modeling seems to be very, very nice. One thing that actually really impresses me, if I can remember the button, which hopefully won't end up with me crashing my car as I try and figure out what the button actually is for this, is the way that the stuff reflects on the bonnet. There's actually an awful lot of that, and it's pretty damn impressive. Whoa, okay, I'm not used to this perspective at all. I'm gonna crash into stuff. There you go, you can see the kind of real-time reflections on the bonnet. Pretty cool, although for some reason some of the paint is actually a little bit pixely, which definitely takes away from that. I completely missed that turn. Now, big bugbear. Big, stumpy, scary bugbear that is inhabiting the forest. What is that bugbear, you might ask? The bugbear is... Oh, for crying out loud. Let's rewind that, shall we? You arsehole. What the hell are you doing? Right, you're going to go at the barrier this time. You're going to play like that. The big bugbear. There is no cabin view. This is very unusual for Grid. I mean, Grid usually has that, and a lot of Codemaster games do have the in-cockpit views, which are very much liked by a lot of people. They're good for immersion. Now, they claimed that only about 5% of people actually used it. You might be right there, very much so, but I certainly think it's a selling point to more hardcore racing fans. And honestly, every now and again, I like to get into it because more often than not, those cockpits are really nicely detailed, and it does give that immersion factor. And for a game that's desperate to immerse you into the fantasy of being this viral internet sensation, yeah, I know, and being involved in this proto-league and you kind of being the linchpin of whether or not that league actually succeeds, it is very strange that they would decide to take away the cockpit views. I have to assume it was a cost factor. I mean, it must be very, very expensive to model all that stuff, but even then, that's the kind of thing that you need to do in order to really immerse people. The problem, of course, becomes that this game really isn't designed around hardcore racing fans. And if you believe that, then I'd like to ask you exactly where all of the tweaking went. The tweaking has completely gone in favor of performance packages that you buy in the online version for in-game credits, of course. Again, you don't buy them for real money. That allow you to just get a straight-up upgrade. There doesn't appear to be any tweaking whatsoever. And it seems like the actual handling, based on what I played from the original grid, has been made a little bit more arcadey and a little bit more drifty. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm very much a casual racing game fan, to the point where I'll recognize some of the cars here and there, I'll recognize a little bit of the lingo, and I just like driving around tracks crashing into things. That is generally all I really need from a racing game. But also, I generally don't spend a lot of time with racing games. I will, more often than not, just play a racing game a little bit and say, alright, cool. That was the racing game. Man, that was a bad start. They've really ramped up the difficulty from Tier 1 to Tier 2, actually, but to be honest, I was driving terribly. So let's do it better. There we go. It seems like I can't lose this anyway. I'm not allowed, so there we go. We'll just have to drive this a little bit better as we talk about the other stuff. So, I mean, my opinion on racing games is really not that relevant to hardcore fans of the genre, because it's not a genre that I know enough about to really make an educated opinion based on the kind of information that you, as a hardcore racing fan, would want. What I can do is provide the more casual perspective, which I believe there are a lot of casual racing fans. I have a feeling that Grid 2 will actually be very appealing to those people, and I say that for a number of different reasons. So the first one, of course, is the handling. There's a lot of emphasis on drift, a lot of it, actually. Even in Tier 1, pretty much all of your cars are really good at drifting. And I picked the one that was best at drifting, and even though I don't know if it even was, I mean, it's hard to actually tell. The statistics that are given to you by the game are fairly limited. You've got like 5 different bars for performance. I'm like, I don't know what exactly is going on here. Oh, that was messy. So, like, I picked the one with the best drift, at least I think. You get given little pieces of information, but the game doesn't do a great job of actually providing you feedback on what cars you're driving. So, to me, it was just a case of, well, I guess I'll pick the one that I like the look of the most. It's like, this is the sexiest looking vehicle, so I guess I'll drive that. Which is not ideal. You know, that's not really how you want to teach casual fans about cars by any stretch of the imagination. But the handling's really only the first part of it. The second part of it is an interesting innovation that I actually think does not necessarily bode well for more hardcore racing fans that really like to learn the tracks and things like that. And that's the idea of live routes. So live routes means that there are tracks that will change your route dynamically throughout the race. So it's very much a more reactionary style of racing. To me, that's a really good thing, because as a casual fan, I don't have time or indeed inclination to actually learn the tracks. I don't want to. But I want to be able to compete on a reasonable level with people online. The only way that's going to happen for me is if they remove the need to learn the tracks. Because again, ain't nobody got time for that. There we go, that's what I'm talking about. That was a good corner. However, I don't think that that is actually beneficial for hardcore racing fans. I think that there is definitely a place for that. As someone that actually is more into fighting games than racing games, if I want to make an analogy there, it's like saying, well, you shouldn't have to learn all the moves. And I'm in two minds about that. Like, even if you have, say, let's just say you have the Wii U, for instance, where you have that tablet control that lets you activate moves at will. It doesn't necessarily matter if you know how to pull off the moves. It's not really about memorizing that stuff. It's when you do it, yeah? It's your game sense that makes you skillful. You can bash the best move over and over again and still get perfected by someone that knows how to beat it. So I don't really necessarily think that that's the biggest deal all the time, but I don't believe that you should take that away completely, because it's kind of an integral part of the genre, and it also separates the really bad players from the guys who start to get competitive. And after that comes in, you know, every competitive player knows all the moves anyway. Nice, there we go. Doesn't have a door left, but hey, it doesn't matter. It's a crappy little car anyway. It separates those people, and that's fine. You know, that's something that you have to learn. That's one of those stages that you have to go through in order to be competitive. And in racing games, I assume that learning the tracks is exactly the same thing. But having these live races and having these live routes, that doesn't really come into effect anymore. So I'm in two minds about it. I think it's a cool innovation, don't get me wrong. Although I'm a little bit concerned that it may have been used as an excuse to sort of reduce the overall variety of the tracks. For instance, in the first 3 hours of the game, you basically race in 3 different locations. There's a city, there's a forest, and then there is this race that is basically just around a kind of cliff. It's a very windy cliff road. And that's really about it. Ooh, a Volkswagen Golf. Or, is that a Ford Focus? I don't even know. I'll take the Golf. Thank you very much. Yes, it is a Focus. It's like, it's written over there, you idiot. Damn right, I'll take the Golf. Thank you very much. Now, I was talking about those choices. That's one right there. You're just, like, given cars at random. There's no actual way of earning them. Aside from that. You know, we could go and do the vehicle challenge and win the other one, so I guess I can show you that one. I don't know if getting rid of the whole earning money progression thing is necessarily a good thing. It may just be me that really, really likes that. I think it almost breaks up some of the monotony, because for me, straight up racing is not interesting enough to really keep me playing all of the time. And as such, having that progression system in play helps. I guess that's how casual shooter fans feel with Call of Duty. It's interesting that I now finally kind of understand that point of view. If you're not really into shooting, then something like a progression system could really keep you interested across the length of the game and keep you playing it when the actions are fairly repetitive. I think racing games, certainly lately, have done exactly the same thing, allowing you to earn cars and earn upgrades and so on and so forth. But in the case of earning cars in the single player, there's really not a lot of that. That said, I feel that it's nicely countered by the story. I think you can get away with it as a result of that. And also, I think that compared to other games like, say, Dirt 2... Was it Dirt 2 that really shoved that story in your face to such an obnoxious level that it barely let you race? I mean, I remember going into one of the Dirt games and having it go on for like 25 minutes of unskippable nonsense with obnoxious douchey lingo and stuff like that. I'm like, God, I came here to race, not for this. I clearly didn't come here to race, as you can see, because I'm driving like an idiot, but never mind. I'm trying to make a point, not focus on the road. This game actually gets you into the racing pretty quickly, and I find that the story complements the racing, doesn't get in the way of it. It's not obnoxious. And that's actually quite a skillful thing to do, because I think that if you're taking this concept, the whole idea of the viral internet star and so on and so forth, has so much potential to be utterly obnoxious in every way. And actually it's not. It's tastefully understated. And I've got to commend them for that. I really, really do. But I still think that more progression would be nice. And I think, obviously, if you want that... Oh, that was ugly. Let's try again. I think that was the front of my car coming off. Not exactly ideal. If you want more of that, then you've basically got to play the online mode. Like, alright, okay. If that's how it's going to be, then that's how it's going to be. Presentation-wise, I mean, it looks gorgeous. The actual damage modeling is phenomenal, and obviously on PC, the effects are fantastic. I love the effect on the lights. I don't know what it is about car lights. There's something about car lights that I really, really like to watch. And when a racing game does a really awesome, like, brake light effect, for some reason I appreciate that unreasonably. There's this weird video filter that they do. Somehow I still won that, even though I was driving like an idiot. Hey, there you go. There's this weird video effect they do when you crash, but the sparks that come out when you actually hit something and grind against the side barrier, they look unbelievably gorgeous. Really, really nice. The overall racing, which is obviously at the core of the game, I'm in two minds about it. I think there's a sufficient variety of racing types. Elimination races, time trials, and the promo events are often a little bit weird. There's stuff like face-offs where it's round of 8 onwards, you do 1-on-1, then it's the round of 4, then it ends up being the grand final, and so on and so forth. Plus, you also get to spice it up by adding sponsors to your car. Now, sponsors, they're not just cosmetic, they're actually in-game objectives that you gain fans for. So, if I go to change player livery, for instance, I can go to sponsors here, you can see a whole bunch of legit sponsors. Power Chips might actually have the worst logo in the history of everything. It looks like something I made in flaming text 15 years ago. But you can put your sponsors on your vehicle, and the objectives for each one is down the bottom. You can also randomize them if you really want some interesting challenges. So that kind of spices up the racing a little bit there, which I do very much appreciate. However, I'm not entirely sure if the base racing model is enough to keep me as a casual racing fan interested. I think the perceived lack of variety of tracks may hurt it. There's a lot of different routes around a lot of the very, very similar courses. And I'm only just now, after about 3 hours, getting into the next stage of that, where I actually get to see some new stuff, i.e. some European cities. There are also some cities in Asia. But a lot of the American races, it's just like, it's another city. It's the same kind of thing over and over and over again. Maybe I just don't have the understanding of the nuance. Maybe that's why. But again, I've said it before, I'm a casual racing fan. Maybe I just need a little bit more of that. I've looked at the track list, and I don't see a huge amount of really, really interesting places to go. The Asian territories are probably going to be the most interesting. Some of this stuff's okay. I mean, this is in Barcelona, so this is going to look pretty good here. But this is really nothing that stuff like Metropolis Street Racer or Project Gotham have not done in the past here. Alfa Romeo. I'll take the Alfa Romeo for this one. It's an appropriate thing. You don't want to take a German car into Italy. It's bad luck. On the flip side, of course, there's a ton of really good real-world detail here, and a lot of the background stuff has a great attention to detail, a lot of stuff like that. Admittedly, the stuff like the... Why is it that no racing game can ever get the spectator models right? They always look dreadful in comparison to everything else. I always feel like it's a situation where there's so much focus put on the actual models of the cars and less on everything else. It's almost also like car games and racing games are actually used as a showcase for almost every new console I've ever seen. It's like, hey, look at our detail in the cars. Like, I have to wonder if that's just an easy thing to do. I guess, you know, it's a piece of metal. It can't be that hard to do. Detailing a real moving human being is a little bit trickier. But again, I still always have to be impressed in almost every racing game I go into when I see that amazing detail on those new cars there. So the stuff that's licensed as well, and the damage modeling in particular. I'm very glad that the game didn't move away from damage modeling. I think that's a cool thing to do. And I also think that manufacturers are starting to warm up to the fact that, yes, they don't actually mind their brand new, super expensive cars being smashed up in a game. It used to be a case that that would never happen. Oh, I love it. I've opened the boot. Is this actually going to fly off? It's actually obscuring my vision here, which is not ideal. Maybe I should crash into something and knock it off. Oh, there we go. I snapped it closed again. That was deliberate, guys. Don't deny it. That is what I like to call precision driving. There we go.
5 drivers still here. Show them what you got.
It's kind of sad for me to say this, but I mean, looking at a game that's so gorgeous, and there's obviously been a lot of tender loving care put into it, I, as a casual fan, merely kind of find it adequate. It's not enough to really keep me interested in playing for an extended length of time. I'll dip in every now and again, play a couple of races, and say, alright, that's pretty much about it. I'm not compelled to keep going at a great pace, and I don't really know if it's just down to the driving. I think the driving's fun enough, but I'm the kind of person that likes games like Burnout, and I like games like Wipeout. I'm not really into the more realistic races. If I want to use real cars, I want to use them in a game like Blur, where I can also fire plasma at people. You know, that's pretty fun to me. And it's nice that I can get a little bit aggressive. It doesn't really penalize you too much, except in very specific modes for shoving other cars around, which is always nice to see. Definitely like that a lot. But it doesn't really do anything amazing and special. I think that racing games are perhaps some of the most iterative genres, and sports games in general are very iterative. So I guess it's not really all that surprising that we see Grid doing kind of the same thing, iterating on what came before, but I think it's what it took away that is a little bit disturbing. You know, those in-cockpit views being a prime example. I have to wonder if they'll make them later on as DLC or something along those lines. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. I'm just not really drawn into it. And I think it's just because it doesn't quite do enough different for me as a casual fan to really differentiate it. I just don't have that understanding of nuance. I have no doubt that a big racing game fan could point out pages and pages of differences between this and Race Driver Grid. But for me, someone who casually enjoyed Grid and is now casually enjoying this, for me this is kind of more of the same, and the only thing that's really kind of keeping me in it is this storyline that's going on, which I think is praise to the storyline itself, and obviously they were aiming that at people like me, and they succeeded. Well done. They did a pretty good job there. Ooh, an old battered up Mercedes or an old battered up BMW. Let's take the BMW. There we go. They just keep giving you cars. Like, yeah, have some more cars. It's weird because I don't feel like I earned them, which I think is actually a nice piece of risk-reward thing going on there. Sweet. Okay. Right, you can stop calling me John now. I'm going to get out of this and I'm going to show you a little bit of the online before I leave. I think by watching this as a racing fan, you can maybe figure out whether or not it's really your bag. For me, as I said, it doesn't do enough different to really keep me interested and keep me tied into the game. Okay, so welcome to the online version of this. That is one of the pre-order cars, I believe. That's Tier 4. We will not be driving that. As cool as that is, I believe that's a Mercedes McLaren of some description. Now, we'll have a look at the upgrades here. These are some of the upgrades that you can actually buy. They just appear to be straight-up upgrades. Yeah, I don't think there's any real choice here from what I can tell. As you can see... Actually, it seems like maybe there... No, there isn't. You just buy them, I think, seems to be the way of doing things here. It's like, do you want to purchase this upgrade? And then you buy the upgrade, and that really is about it. Obviously, for a Tier 4 car, it costs an absolute bloody fortune. Look at our vehicle showroom and see what we've actually got here. Those are the Tier 4s. As you can see, a lot of level unlocks going on here. Some pretty crazy cars. A lot of nice McLarens and Audis. And you could, yes, you could drive a Bugatti, which is a wonderful thing indeed. But then you go all the way down to Tier 1, and depending on which car you've picked, depends on which tier you happen to be racing in. Although, I believe if you actually set up the game, you can set the tier. So... it may very well be that if you have a Tier 4 unlocked, they can force you to use that. So this is the only one that I currently own, which is this Alfa Romeo. We'll look at the upgrades. Cost, I can very much upgrade that, and I mean, that's kind of about it, isn't it? That's all that it really involves. And then you go to events, and you can match yourself up. There's a global challenge. There's a rivals mode, which I actually have no idea about, so let's have a quick look at it. Retrieving rival data. Ah, it assigns you a rival. That's pretty cool. And it looks like you can set up social rivalries and things like that. I like that. That's pretty nice. So I can just pick some guy or get a custom guy, maybe just rival with your friends. There's a lot of this leaderboard stuff that's going on as well. So if you have a bunch of people that have this game, I think if you're a racing fan, then you would end up finding it fairly compelling. And then the online mode is available. You can either create a custom matchup or just go into the matchmaking, which seems to work pretty well. It does have the option to mute all of the microphones. Thank you. Thank you, game. God, it's so rare that we even get that. Online playlists, online custom events, and the ability to join others in session or invite. So if I were to do a custom match, I can look at my race types, checkpoint, time attack, face-off, endurance, drift. What the balls is that? That sounds like some kind of delicious pizza treat. Race, there you go. And then you can pick your vehicle tiers. So you don't really get an advantage for having that pre-order car or anything along those lines, and then you can mess around with this as well. Pretty much simple as that, really. And there's not really a lot of difference to be had there. The experience that I've had with it, I raced a couple of times. It was fine. Didn't seem to be any lag. Got my ass kicked. Learned that driving that McLaren is not a good idea. But overall, Grid 2 is a solid package for what it is. It's a good PC version. It's graphically gorgeous. But to me, it doesn't really scream inspired in any way. To me, as a casual racing fan, doesn't do enough to differentiate itself from the rest of the pack, and I'm the kind of person that would prefer to play something... If you're going to go arcadey, then go a little bit further. Like, I'd prefer to play something like Ridge Racer Unbounded, or something like Burnout, so on and so forth. For me, this kind of thing isn't my thing. but hopefully you can see by this video whether or not it is yours. For me, it is merely adequate. It's a fairly average title that doesn't really seem to go far enough to truly say, hey, look at me, I'm a really big sequel to a really good game that came out several years ago, and I've got new stuff to offer. And to me, I'm like, I have to ask where. You know, where is that stuff? Alright, folks, there you go. Grid 2. Currently available on Steam as well as Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3. My name has been TotalBiscuit. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.